So I guess the talk really goes along the lines of the obvious disclaimer is that PEDs are a bad idea. You shouldn't take PEDs. They're not good for your health long term. If you're going to take them, then, what do you do to minimize problems, etc., etc.? And I guess for me, I would probably hark back to my tried and true 5 health hacks approach, which are designed to minimize a person's inflammatory responses and thus put their body in the best position of being most likely to heal itself from whatever you're doing to it. I guess including the use of the PEDs. But it's not like a specific program of here's what we do specifically to counteract the PEDs. So, we can run through those 5 again.
I think we already know the 5 health hacks. What I want to go into is why each one's particularly helpful. So what we see in the bodybuilding space at the moment, like the most prolific causes based on, autopsies, things like that, of different disease states in dead bodybuilders is poor kidney function and heart attacks. And they're the 2 things that seem to come out the most. What kind of mechanisms do you think are at play with that, and what causing that, and how might someone approach that? Obviously there's links between like sugar intake and kidney health and things like that, but what exactly does someone need to do?
Okay. Well, I suppose it depends on exactly what dastardly mixture of PEDs a person's been taking. What are the most common ones that are being taken these days, Jonathan?
Testosterone, Deca, Winstrol, Anavar, Clenbuterol, probably.
Right.
So some stimulants, some anabolics, yeah.
Right. So mostly the ones that are going to have the long-term effect of the anabolic things. So these are substances that cause unnatural growth and development of various tissues. Obviously, the target is the skeletal muscles, but you'll find that there is hypertrophy in the cardiac tissue as well, the heart muscle, and that can get to a level that the heart will start to interfere with its own ability to pump the blood, which obviously is a really bad thing. That's why you're finding that you've got clots and heart attacks and strokes and all this kind of nonsense happening in quite a young population of people who seem to be fit because they look great, don't they? These bodybuilders, they've put all this training in, they've built all this musculature, and we would think of these as some of the healthiest people on the planet if we didn't know better. It turns out they're not, and this is one of the major things why. As for the kidney issues, again, not sure of the exact mechanisms at play, but it's going to be to do with probably most of these athletes are consuming vastly more protein than they should. Some of them are consuming carbohydrates as well because I think that's going to help. And they've got the PEDs coming in, which is causing an unnatural development in the kidney tissue, thus interfering with its function. I'd suggest that all of these 3 things are at play. So, to me, the way to counteract all the effects of the PEDs is to just knock it the fuck off, frankly. And the whole lifestyle involved around that at some point, preferably sooner rather than later. I don't think there's a specific, unless you know of some that bodybuilders are doing. I don't know of any specific ways of counteracting those effects of those drugs. I think it's you take those drugs and you throw that dice, don't you?
Yeah, it's the same kind of approach you'd use with, you start the carnivore diet, for example. What are your blood levels? What's your inflammation? What are the useful things you can look at? Point A to point B, run intervention. So we run it the same way as bodybuilders. A drug may be added in. How does that affect your sleep? How does it affect your recovery? Well, if it's increasing your metabolic rate by 10%, you're in fact oxidizing more fat. but then you're sleeping and your sleep quality's gone down 20% and you can't train in the gym, well, you've just knocked off that exercise component of losing body fat by quite a large degree. And then, of course, the recovery aspect. So everything is added in as needed. So that's the way the more current modern approach goes. Just because there's more educators in the space like yourself that talk about health and health promotion and advocacy of safe practices.
Yeah.
I do find that it seems to be the 1,000 grams of carbohydrate per day kind of thing that causes a lot of people kidney issues. I recently raised my EGFR levels from 54 for what it's worth, even though I've had the nuclear tracer tests that say my kidneys are in great health anyway. And I've raised that from 54 up to 80, and I've done that in 2 months with probably no real significant change in my intervention other than adding in liposomal glutathione, astragalus root extract, and TUDCA and NAC, so liver and kidney support supplements.
Okay.
So they've altered my blood values. Have these things had some other deleterious effect is yet to be seen, but that's what the current practice is in bodybuilding. Most of it is maybe don't change the diet, but add in a supplement. So these guys are going around with these Tupperware boxes, fish and tackle boxes, 30 different squares in them, and having, with each injection, they're doing a different thing and this, that, and the other. And I do see it, and they proudly promote it on Instagram as healthy bodybuilding. And I think,
wow.
Well, that is a standard practice, Bart, and that is what you go when you go and see it on Instagram. And that is the normal. That is what the health advocates promote.
Right. I suppose that it probably is fair for me to say that I am personally not a huge fan of people taking bloods and taking readings from their bloods, especially a one-off bloods, and going, right, so on the basis of these results, I'm going to do this, that, and the other thing. I'm always someone that's about dealing with symptomology, and the people that I consult with these days are largely people with states of dishealth, unhealth, problems. I deal with very few professional athletes these days. I still have a couple on my books, but none of them are bodybuilders. And the reason for that is even if a bodybuilder asked me to work with them, I would say, no, I'm not going to, personally, because I think that a lot of what goes on in there is insane. I mean, and I don't think you'd disagree with me, would you?
No, I'd completely agree. I think it is absolutely absurd the way we have to use different medication and supplements to patch up other problems. The idea is we start from like the bare minimum, then refine. But people always think more is better. Problem with more is better is you end up using more drugs to tackle the side effects. Yeah. Some people now are doing a shotgun approach, which is use all the drugs at a low dose. You don't know what's causing what side effects, if any, do come up. But these are the people that are doing these steroid courses, maybe 2 or 3 sessions in, they're sort of mixing things up. And it's like, whatever happened, just, if you start a supplement, I'll try 3 Cerule capsules per day. Yeah. Run it for a month, try 4, see where the benefit lies and go from there. But that's not what many people do, sadly. So
No. All right. So that all sounds like the whole industry hasn't really moved on in 20-something years, actually. It sounds like bodybuilders behind the scenes are doing pretty much the same kind of crazy shit they always were doing. So, yeah, I guess at the end of the day, my suggestions for people involved in that would be, number 1, rethink your involvement in doing that. Number 2, if you're not going to stop doing that yesterday, I would definitely look at the 5 health hacks, as that's always my go-to in terms of mitigating pretty much almost anything a person is doing. I know it's not specialist advice at all in terms of it doesn't deal with any particular one thing. It just deals with all the major big killers that most people come across at some point. Whether or not it's going to be hugely effective versus the negative effects of PEDs and a stack of this, that, and the other thing, I don't know.
Sure.
It's how long's a piece of string, and it's an individual thing based on a person's genes and the environment in which those genes are placed by that person. There's no manual that we can go to here.
Yeah, there's no rule book in bodybuilding, and if we followed what the guys did in the past, as if to say, oh, you know, they were healthier or they did it better, most of them had liver and kidney transplants. Arnold, for example, he's not made of all his organs; they're not his own born and bred organs, for example. Different joints being replaced, and this kind of brings us to the next question, which is on what is a healthy body composition, or what is a healthy level of musculature? And I appreciate it's not a one size fits all answer. For example, me, my dad, my family, the males, my family, if we were to meet our BMI criteria, and we'd be absolutely emaciated. And that is even with the absence of muscle in our body. Our bodies just don't hold the weight that well. I'm 93, 92 kilos now. I'm meant to be about 80, and I'm below 5% body fat. You know, it's not going to happen. And I'm starting to look a bit gaunt myself right now. So it just goes to show. But I mean, my kind of question here is there a scale you use, you know, kilograms per inch of height or something, or where you can say, okay, that's when people start to get ill effects from being too muscular?
Yeah. Well, again, it's quite individual. It's like anything, it's a bell-shaped curve with an average value for any given value. So any statement would be around the center of that curve, with the full understanding that there are people on either end of that curve. And it sounds like, you know, maybe your folks are at one end of that curve in terms of muscularity. And so the BMI, because it's the BMI calculation is the one that's used.
Yeah.
To spoil the fun. And that really is a weight per inch in height thing. You take your height in meters squared. So in my case, 5'6" or 168 centimeters. So I go 1.68 times 1.68, which gives me a number. And then I multiply that number by the ideal body mass range for a male of European descent, which is 22.5, we're told. And it gives us a number. In my case, it gives 65 odd kilos, something like that, which is smack on what I weigh. So I'm perfect in every way, shape, or form. So anyone that says I'm not, I identify as perfect. And if you don't respect my identity as perfect, then you're guilty of hate speech and you're a bigot.
Exactly.
Yeah. But Jonathan,
mine's 75, but mine's 75 kilos, but I just checked.
Right.
It's not going to happen.
No, so the only way you're going to do that is to stop training, stop taking any kind of gear whatsoever, and also probably, you know, not go to a normal eating pattern. Like, you're going to have to reduce your intakes quite a bit from what they probably are now.
Yeah, how would someone do that? I mean, obviously, you reduce your training, you reduce your output, your demand on your appetite would reduce over time. Yeah. How's someone going to do that? Because obviously losing muscle tissue, like having it come off your body, isn't going to be I wouldn't have thought it'd be an easy process, obviously beyond aging, you know.
Well, you'd think not, wouldn't you? But it also seems to be one of those grossly unfair things that all your hard-earned gains in terms of muscle growth over the years tend to melt off much more quickly than they went on. Again, it's individual in terms of how quickly it comes off a given person. You may or may not be able to rely on your hunger and satiety signaling, because you'll be used to eating much more food because of the training that you've been doing. Suddenly stop doing that training, your body doesn't really know that for a bit, so you're probably going to overeat for a bit and get pudgy as well as lose muscle mass. So then you've got that to deal with as well. And I'm not going to tell you to sit and do hours of cardio, don't worry. But, you know, it's one of those things that the detraining process can be, you know, as negative in many ways as the positivity of the training process, or the perceived positivity of it. I think that a person that decides they're going to quit this bodybuilding game and live a more normal life. I think one of the biggest changes probably for these people is a psychological change, a complete change of how they view, well, themselves and the universe around them, I think. I mean, you'd know more about that than I do. I've never been a bodybuilder per se. I used to lift when I was young, but I was never into, being the body beautiful, or I've never taken PEDs myself or anything like that. So I don't really know, but I'm just going on what I would imagine it would be like.
I must agree, yeah. I mean, it's funny when you immerse yourself in this kind of industry, being like a bodybuilding industry. You see a lot of health promotion in some aspects, but you'll see a lot of health, definitely demotion, if anything, regression. You go to a fitness exhibition, they're selling cookies and donuts and things, and that's the norm. When they get off stage, these guys are binge eating, gaining 20, 30 pounds. The carnivore diet, just linking back to like the theme of my channel, has been really effective. I mean, after my show, I'd usually binge eat and eat a load of crap, and I didn't eat anything off plan, really. I increased my food intake because I was starving hungry. I was ripped, but I didn't eat off plan. I didn't have a treat for about 3 weeks. It was only until the 3-week mark came by, and I was like, I'm still way too lean. I can't sleep properly like this, and my bones hurt, sort of thing. So I just ate a lot of stuff, activated the round-up cycle, gained a bit of fat over 3 days, did the job, got myself back to normal in 3 days. Then, So it certainly worked. But I mean, my next question relates to, you said you've worked with different elite athletes of different sports, maybe less or more physical than bodybuilders. What does their kind of performance enhancing drug use look like, or does it change at all? Have you noticed much difference? Or
okay.
Introducing Beef Up Carnivore Bodybuilding Bible. The ultimate guide for men and women to lose fat and build muscle. And the best part, it's only $12. Don't miss out on the most detailed resource available. Get a copy now at compositionconsultant.com.
Mostly the sort of elite level athletes that I've worked with in the past, most of them have been involved in sports that do test and don't have a leeway for this kind of stuff. So, I mean, examples I can give you. Currently, I work with at least one professional mixed martial artist. They test those guys. They're allowed to take performance enhancing pretty much anything. So, and I've got this guy on a carnivore diet, which all his trainers and all his colleagues in that sport are telling him he's nuts and it's never going to work. And he's actually, it is working for him. Of course it is, because it's the ideal human diet. And everyone's watching that with great interest. I can tell you actually that, he actually is able to keep up. He is able to compete and perform well on a carnivore diet. And I know he is adherent. He's being very, very honest about his level of adherence. He's not perfect, but he's been pretty damn good. So there's an example. I have worked in the past with, for example, the New Zealand All Blacks rugby team in a capacity in terms of on the research side of what those guys go through physiologically. And I know that 3 or 4 of the former All Blacks were carnivores. We're talking 2011-ish. I was involved in a certain way in their preparation for the 2011 World Cup that they won. So, those guys were tested. So that all their muscle building and bulking and such that they do is all natural. And I've worked with NRL Referees Association. Not so much athletes, to be fair. Well, one of them was at that time. There was one bloke that stood out from the crowd at the time I was working with those guys, who was absolutely not only the fittest referee, but the fittest bloke on the field, fitter than any of the players, actually. We're talking Bill Harrigan. This is the bloke who was the absolute standout. And all the other guys were kind of like, while they were fit as athletes, they were not in the same category. So there was that. And I know that those guys aren't taking drugs. at least not performance enhancing ones.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the kind of background in terms of elite athletes for me. So no bodybuilders is what I'm saying. Yeah,
Sure.
and I probably would have refused then too, when I was working with those kind of guys in a more full-time sort of a way.
Yeah, I must say, just on a personal note, bodybuilders are the hardest people to work with by a long shot, by an absolute mile. Because if they have the confidence to say, oh, I'm going to use these performance-enhancing drugs, I'd say almost like the egotism or the arrogance to say, you know, this is going to make me a world-class athlete sort of thing, which for many of us, it's not the case. But I think a lot of the times it's their unwillingness to change things or learn slightly. I mean, these guys watching me on Instagram all the time, they're liking my posts and they're like, oh, I want to try it at some point. I want to try it, but I'm worried about this, that, and the other. I'm like, you like the way I eat? You know, every single story I post up, I just post my standard food, you know, just typical carnivore meals, animal foods, you know. They like it and they're like, oh, you look so good, your diet's so good. I'm like, you could do the same. You could do the same just like that. You could start literally now. But, you know, athletes need carbs apparently. I've got a lot to say about that, and but yes, I've got another topic now which is completely unrelated to what we spoke about. It's to do with training though. So, but what are your thoughts on the new lengthened partials research if you've looked at it? So the idea is that there's more studies coming out of different exercise, different body parts that say, okay, we focus more on the lengthened range of a movement for muscular hypertrophy, and it's triggered more muscle growth versus just doing the shortened range or full range of motion. There's different studies, and it seems to be a bit of a mismatch with different body parts, you know, things like that. I mean, do you see this as having any promise in the future, or do you think it's just going to be so limited to work out?
Right. Excuse me. The issue with such things, using a partial range of motion, is that my working principle for all training ideas is that so you train, so shall you perform. Now, if performance for you is just having big muscles, well, so be it. That's not necessarily a problem. Say you're a bodybuilder and your sole goal is aesthetically looking the best, the biggest, the most symmetrical, or whatever it is that judges look for in terms of bodybuilders. Fine. I've dealt, however, throughout my career with athletes who perform a certain thing in their sport. So using a shortened range of motion or a partial range of motion will mean that that athlete is trained only in that range of motion, ideally, and any crossover for any movement outside of that range is going to, the further away from that range you get, the more that training effect will fall away.
Yeah.
So that athlete may be very, very strong at a certain range, but very, very weak elsewhere, which is going to predispose that athlete to injury, poor performance, problems. So as a trainer of people in the past, mostly, I still do train, as I say, I still do train one or two athletes, but it's really much a thing of the past these days. What have I got? 2 or 3 elite athletes that I still work with on any level. But they're all athletes who perform a certain thing, like the mixed martial arts guy I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Needs to be able to perform when he's fighting, which means he needs his whole range of motion, not just a part of it. So we need to train fully through the range, make sure his form is correct in terms of all of that kind of stuff. As opposed to, say, to the bodybuilder who really, it doesn't matter. They get on stage, they have the biggest biceps, whatever it is, there you go. Have a trophy, I guess. Am I right about that? I don't know. That's kind of a guess.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much what I can confirm myself. There's a guy, I think his name was Pete Sisko, and a guy called John Little. Older school trainers, you know, quite intellectual people. Now they sort of come up with this idea of like static contraction training. So the idea wasn't across the board, everyone does isometrics, holds, you know, it's more, okay, this person can't do 400 motion, they're injured, they're elderly. How do we get them to do something? A wall sit. a plank, a press up, So I found that quite effective for preventing and mitigating further injury. But the prerequisite is, can I recover from it? Now, if it's making me excessively sore because I'm doing an extended set on biceps and my biceps back here and it's fully stretched out and I'm getting really sore, my weights aren't tracking up as I'm not progressing or I'm even regressing, then I'll take that out. It's obviously more than what I can recover from. So do you stand by the same sort of principle as in, are you progressing or not? Because people will like to add these things in without measuring the process,
Yeah, progression is important. And I think that a lot of athletes are too ready, too happy to sit back on a plateau and go, well, I've plateaued now. So now I'm near my peak. Now I just need to maintain being near my peak. Whereas most athletes don't realize that where they do actually plateau out is actually nowhere near their real peak if they actually trained appropriately. The single biggest error in training of any kind for any kind of athlete is in doing vastly too much volume at an intensity which is not where it ought to be.
Mm.
So if you are plateauing as an athlete, the first thing you should do is reduce your volume and increase your intensity, in my book.
Yeah. I found honestly linear progression doing that with everyone. I find a lot of the young men will come to me from a background like overtraining. Oh, I do 80 plus sets per week. But as much as I take on board what they've been doing before, because, if they like doing that, like spend a lot of time in the gym, fair enough. I might put them on a higher tier of training volume overall workload, but I'll scale back the intensity slightly until I know, okay, they can do 3 sets with perfect technique. Now let's up it to 2, but let's try hard. Let's get a closer proximity to failure. Then up it to 1. So obviously there's a learn. If I throw someone a barbell back squat for 1 set to failure and they're a novice, that's not a good idea. They're not going to be able to execute it properly. I can't watch them in the gym. I can't give them that programming, that training that they need. So in that case, I start people on slightly more volume and I work down the volume, if anything. Have you had the same kind of experience?
Yeah. Absolutely. In a lot of the lifting exercises, the most important thing is the form, the technique. And, we got to get that right first. So yes, absolutely, while intensity is important and while the way we moderate intensity mostly in lifting is through the number of reps and sets, so fewer sets, fewer reps, more weight, it's no good loading someone up with weight who can't do the exercise correctly because they're going to get injured. Yeah.
That makes sense to me. I've got this one last question which kind of deviates a little bit from I talk about how the repetitions performed. So I got sent a X3 bar kit recently from Dr. John Jakish, which is lovely. I did 1 set of it and I was trashed, honestly. It was hard work. But how have you found that in your experience, and have you found any pitfalls to it? What have been the pros, what have been the cons? I appreciate it's a home apparatus, so.
Yeah, it's a good bit of kit. I've used it. Kim doesn't like it. It hurts her back as she tries to do the squat thing on it. And I said to her, well, why don't we try a lighter band and see how you go? And then she's like, well, it's too soft at the bottom. It's like, it's nothing. So I can't, it's when Pim decides something's no good, that's it. It's no good. So, okay, fine. It's not for her. I've used it. I think it's a great bit of kit. I think it does what it says it does. It's not the answer to everything. Of course, John's going to say it is. It's his thing. That's what he markets. But no, I think it's, and John is a mate. I consider John a mate of mine as well.
Nice guy, yeah.
He's a good bloke. Yeah. So I'm not trashing the thing, but I'm also not saying this is the absolute answer for everything, and you don't need any other kit, because you do. It's a valid part of the kit, I would suggest. The good thing about it is with the variable resistance thing, it does change the dynamics up in such a way as to potentially shock muscles that might otherwise be plateauing into another phase of growth, if it's used correctly. If you're selecting the right resistance band, and if you, like, when you're doing the variable resistance training X3 style, instead of 2 sets of 8 reps, you're doing 1 set to failure of probably many more reps. The resistance at the bottom of the range is almost none because of the elastic band thing. But at the other end, it's very, very much higher.
Yeah.
And John is quite convinced that physiologically that changes the stimulus enough that muscle hypertrophy occurs. And there's nothing to prove him wrong on that. So, yeah.
I think we can extrapolate from some of the findings with the length of partial research in that, okay, like, for example, they found it particularly effective for calf muscles, for bicep muscles, movements which, body parts which require simple movements to get the job done in a length and path, something which doesn't require much force, lots of simplicity to it. And things like the chest press. I mean, I imagine he's probably taking some notes from Henneman's size principle in terms of like muscle activation, like the motor unit recruitment. So do you think that plays a large part of it? But there's always going to be that margin or whatever percentage where it just doesn't fulfill that criteria in a repetition strength resistance curve profile kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see an athlete, if they're going to use the variable resistance, that they don't abandon the fixed weights altogether.
Yeah.
I would definitely like to see an athlete using both. So maybe you do 2 sets of 8 with a fixed weight and then you finish off with the elastic band, or you do it the other way around to keep your body guessing a bit, sort of thing. I mean, you might even say, I'm going to do 1 set of 8 with a fixed weight, and then I'm going to do the variable resistance so that you're keeping your volume down and your intensity up. It depends what phase of training you're in a bit, whether you're in a growth phase or whether you're in a hiatus phase where you're just maintaining, or, how soon is the next show, all of that.
For sure, yeah. I mean, I'm looking at implementing some home workouts because I'm moving away from my current area soon. Just means I'll have a bit further to get to the gym, and for me, I've got to save all the energy and resources I can. But yeah, I mean, what I'm going to look at doing is doing some home workouts. So I have chin-up bar, all the bands, the X3 bar, a sissy squat, back extension, ab crunch. So I can do some home stuff, some bodyweight stuff. I can have my spine fused. I can make anything work basically, but I need to make work. But then I'm going to be doing some in-gym workouts in a proper resistance training setting. So do you think that would be quite effective? And how would you manage that between maybe like a recovery standpoint? When I do more sets for the home workouts, or do less sets? Is it all the same thing? Is volume equated between calisthenics versus resistance machines?
Yeah. Look, I think the principles are the same, in that ideally what you're looking for is the minimum effective exposure to exercise in terms of volume, which always means that the intensity needs to be maximized. Now, if at home the intensity is less because the kit you've got does not lend itself to the top end of your intensity, then you'd be doing a bit more volume at home.
Sure. Yeah.
Sure. However, ideally, on any given ideal day, any given ideal training session, you want to be closer to top end intensity and minimal exposure to exercise in terms of volume. As close as you can get to that, the better. Consistent with what you've got available and what the needs of the day are and all of that. Now, throw in also the whole complication you've got, obviously, with your spinal issue and all of that stuff. That's, I presume, still on the mend, because it's going to be several years, I think.
It's
I
a
mean,
long recovery. It's just very carefully micromanaged. My whole sessions are, I get in, I know roughly what I want to do, but how I'm going to do that is on that minute sort of judgment,
Yeah, you're going to have to listen to your body.
Yeah.
Which, is a tough thing if you've got a program and, the program says we're doing this, that, and the other thing. This is what I need to achieve on any given day. But your body says, no, Jonathan, that's not what we're doing today. That can be a tough one, can't it, I guess?
Yeah, it's fun in a way. It's like creating my own ever-going experiment, but I'm looking forward to training a bit less. I love training, honestly. When I go to the gym, I anticipate it. When I'm in there, I'm focused. It gives me some sort of goal, but I'm at the point now where,
it's a mental illness,
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, I mean, I'm training about 4 sessions a week at the moment. Some weeks I'm training 3. It's just auto-regulating recovery, and, I'm doing, at most, I think I'm doing 24 sets per week total. That includes everything. So, there aren't warm-ups. There aren't warm-ups in my workouts. Some things I'll do 2 sets. If something's a bit dodgy for my spine, maybe I'll do a warm-up set just to feel the motion. But it's not close to failure. It's more just doing a couple of reps, feeling it. Okay, maybe switch the exercise this week. So it's quite a full tab. Yeah, I'm doing it with 5 to 7 sets per session.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting the job done.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah. I'm guessing that's similar to how you would program a sort of session, 3 sessions a week, full body, big movements. Yeah. And how does your cadence work? I know we've spoken a bit about length and partials and things. Is it 1 second up, 10 down, 5 down?
Yeah, look, for a fixed weight, I've always been a fan of rapid concentric and controlled eccentric. I've also never used isometrics for anyone other than a gymnast, pretty much. Purely because it's not specific to what they do. Whereas for a gymnast, it is. A gymnast needs isometric strength. They need to be able to tolerate the isometric contraction and hold it steady. So that's part of their training. But for everybody else, it's concentric, eccentric without the isometric stuff. And it's explosively up and slowly controlled on the way down. And I've never really rethought that or looked at that again. I've read papers over the years and nothing ever stuck out to me that suggested that was wrong and I should suggest anything different to an athlete. And so I've just always gone with that.
Yeah, I think it's probably, from what I've seen, there is crossover. So it doesn't necessarily matter entirely if you do fast or slow reps, broadly speaking. But if you're an elite athlete, if you've got to throw hoops, your best bet's going to be launching it as quickly as possible under a game setting, not slowly kind of gliding it up, for the hoop. It's not going to work out. But I've looked at some research which is kind of looking at 1, 4, and 10 second concentrics, and I think they also match the eccentrics. They found 4 seconds safer and 10 seconds again even safer than that. I found that very helpful for myself to reduce damage, wear and tear, and things like that, and injury. And my joints have honestly never felt better. So obviously I use good technique anyway, but if I can use good technique but then control it in the bottom of a hack squat, I've got a 2 to 3 second pause down there. Okay, well, I know it's going to be my quads activating to get me to the top, not my spine, my vertebrae, my spinal column flexing round to try and, use momentum. So it's a different goal altogether. I'm not trying to create any inertia. I'm trying to eliminate all of it. I mean, has that been something you found totally useful? And I know you sort of said, as slow as possible. Is that 5 seconds, 10 seconds down, or does it depend on the movement?
Yeah, I guess it's like, 5 seconds-ish. Yeah. I've never gone with the enormously long, like 10 seconds is a long time.
It does feel like a long time. Yeah, I agree. It's not for the patient, most patient people. I get most people on a 5, 2, and 5 second kind of cadence, with the 2 being the isometric at the hardest point. So you're not locking it out and holding it 2 seconds. You're shaking at the bottom for 2 seconds. But I find it gives people the best safety element. But for me, doing it even slower than that seems to be beneficial. I'm getting my brother on it as well. He's doing some hack squats. He's snapped his shin and broke his knee. So he's doing slow hack squats, wall sits, full range of motion again. Like we're still promoting that. But yeah, I mean, I one of the main benefits I've found, I know we're rambling on about it, but is the timing side of it, because 10 seconds is always going to be 10 seconds. Whereas if I'm saying, okay, standardize your reps, and I want you to standardize your reps 1 to 10. Well, the first rep might be 5 seconds. They might rush a few of the middle ones and get to the last one. Then all of a sudden they do a 10-second slow one sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's my problem. So what I do is I literally have my phone in front of me. I put it on the ground, wait until it says an even number. Go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3. And that sets my pace, my standard. So therefore I know every rep that I do is going to be about the same. Nice. Because I'm only doing 3 or 4 reps, I'm looking at the clock and thinking, okay, I've got to get about 80 seconds or whatever it happens to be. And last week got 83 seconds. This week I'm going to get 84 seconds. So it gives me an extra goalpost, something to look at. Whereas if I'm just doing 10 reps and 1 week, I've rushed it, I've ballsed it up, I've not standardized my form. So I've risked injury, which is something obviously someone like myself, I don't want to be seen risking injury, because it's like, well, it's your own fault, Yeah. So.
Yeah. And then, of course, Cadence absolutely affects the overall training effect as well. So if you're doing it differently every time, then how are you going to know or be able to predict training response? I mean, at the end of the day, as a bodybuilder, the response is the thing you're looking for. So you need to get decent feedback in terms of your hypertrophy, your growth. And you need to be able to train to change your cadences around in such a way as to be able to experiment with that and work out what's best for you. And if you're not standardizing, like Jonathan's just been talking about, then you've got no hope. So it makes sense what you're saying there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been good to chat. I mean, we covered a lot of topics today, and hopefully we can go into more detail next time. But what I'll do is I'll link your video to your 5 health hacks below, the most updated one.
Nice.
What I'll also do is link your services page, so all your stuff, Patreon, all that sort of thing. Cool. And also link to your YouTube channel page, and we'll collaborate again soon to talk about something else that's particularly useful, but probably over the top.
Can't wait. Sounds good, Jonathan.
Check out my site at compositionconsultant.com, where your journey to peak performance and optimal health begins. With a degree in human nutrition and over 15 years of training experience, I've guided more than 400 carnivores to not just meet, but exceed their physique and performance goals. Through personalised consultations, comprehensive ebooks and dedicated coaching, I'm here to ensure your success. Join the ranks of those who have transformed their lives. It's time to align your physique goals with positive health outcomes. Visit compositionconsultant.com today and take the first step towards the best version of you.